attention is like a spotlight. We can focus it on one thing and not on others, so that the life that you lead ultimately is about what you pay attention to.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so that they can build their most beautiful life. And today, I am so excited to have an expert on the show who has done just that. Reclaiming his story and time from the digital vortex we are all facing increasingly in our lives. Colin Corby is the creator of the Digital Detox Coach, technologist, athlete, and TEDx speaker. And he is here today to share his story and how he is working to help others develop a healthier relationship with technology. Please welcome to the show, Colin Corby. Thank you so much for being here, Colin.
Thank you ever so much for inviting me. I'm very excited about our talk today.
Me as well. And as our listeners didn't hear off camera before we were coming online, there is so much to talk about. I am so excited to pick your brain because increasingly so, technology and AI have been on my mind and how it's going to change our daily lives in ways we can't even fathom, and it's already doing it. But to start, could you share with us your story and what brought you to where we are now and your mission to help others manage technology in a healthier way and live more productive, happy lives?
So it goes back to when I was in my mid-30s and I had a brilliant job. I worked in technology, but I was working on technology firsts, the first digital cable that went across the Atlantic from the UK to America, the first digital satellites. And it was a really exciting time. But I had great colleagues, but I was working so hard that I got stressed. But nobody talked about stress in those days. And what was happening is that my heart rate started to increase and increase and increase until I saw the stars, and occasionally I would pass out. Now, this was a huge problem because I had a young family, I had a house to pay for, I needed the job. So I went for lots of tests and nothing was found. So then I thought, what is it that I can do? Now, I've been traveling into London a lot, I've been working long hours. So I thought, well, I could get myself fit again. And I remember being a very good swimmer when I was young. So I thought I would go to the local swimming pool and I would swim. And I swam 2 lengths of the swimming pool and I was exhausted. I was wrecked. I was a terrible, terrible swimmer. And so I thought, well, this isn't good. Either I can give up on the idea of being a good swimmer or I could persevere. Now, in a sense, I was lucky because I had no option. I had to do something. So I carried on swimming. I got fitter. I took up lessons so I could learn all the strokes properly. And the lessons went for 1.5 years. Then I started masters swimming, which I know is very popular in the US as well. And then I started racing. And in parallel with this, I got invited to swim with a triathlon group. And they started entering me for triathlons. And in the end, I ended up doing 4 Ironman triathlons. But in that whole process of discovery about, well, by getting fit, you're connecting the mind and the body together because it's really just one thing. So a healthy mind relies on a healthy body. And it was only several months before actually my heart rate could go up, it could go down, it could do anything. I was racing off of the blocks to the gun, and that can set your heart rate really quite high. So I had no problems anymore at work because it was a way of managing the stress and creating more resilience in myself. So I could work in technology, which I love. Then all of a sudden, there's this whole mindset thing going about, well, how can you push yourself? How do you speak to yourselves? What can you do? How far can you take this? And so that whole way of being the mindset of an athlete was really, really interesting. And then probably like a lot of other people, somewhere between 2010 and 2015, I found myself spending too long on my laptop and my smartphone, just like everybody else, to the point where I struggled to find the time to exercise, which is the very thing that was managing the stress. So I'm thinking, well, what's going on here? And then I did some research behind the behavioral aspects of the fantastic things that we can do on our smartphones and our laptops. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. So I love technology. I love sport. And isn't it weird that we spend too long on our phones? And then I had the opportunity of leaving the corporate world and leaving all the technology companies and deciding what it is I wanted to do. And I thought, I'll put all these things together and see if I can help other professionals get a better balance. It's all about balance and sustainability between what we must do with technology in order to live and work in the modern world and what we have to do for ourselves as biological and social animals. So in 2018, I created the Digital Detox Coach, and that's where I've been since.
And I love the work you're doing, and hearing your story so generously shared with us. I think so many of us have experienced that moment where we've become so deconditioned because we're working too much. Maybe we're in school. Maybe we were athletes in elementary school through high school, and then we went to college and we had to learn how to learn for the first time. Maybe many people weren't necessarily challenged in their lower grades, and they go to college and then they just dive into academics and they forget that they have a life outside of academics, right? And I think our relationship, when I think back to my youth, that was something I experienced. And that just single focusedness of that time of life. And now when you think about technology, I see people having that same relationship with technology, but it's not just one limited period of your life, right? It's not, I'm studying for what we call here in the States, the MCAT, the medical examination test. And then after that, I kick the ball down. There's always going to be a new goalpost that we're running towards that's soaking up our time and energy, and we're getting deconditioned, right? But there's a limited time frame to it. Whereas now, it's not just college students that are getting lost in technology. It's the parents, it's the grandparents, and it's the little kids too, who haven't even had that opportunity to play soccer and be completely immersed in that world, or go out and play in the forest all day and be called home when it's dark, right? Those things that we experienced when we were growing up. We have just the population, really from the youngest people to the oldest people, all being pulled into this state of being that sets us up for disconnection and deconditioning. And as you were sharing with your story, we can be really far into it when we recognize how much it is wrecking our health. And so I think it's so important to share those stories. How do you think we could learn, and you've talked about mindset, and I think mindset's really key. How could we learn to heed the warning signs earlier? And I think a great example that you give is syncope or pre-syncope. So that's the fainting that you were talking about. And you talked about the stars. The stars is kind of a middle of the line warning sign, right? So when we're about to faint, we're about to have syncope, we're in pre-syncope, and we might feel a little bit hot. Our heart rate might start to go up. Our field of vision gets narrower, right? And then by the time we're seeing stars, it's getting quite serious. The sand, we don't have much sand left before we're on the floor. And I love that you brought this up, because I use this example with patients all the time. Your brain will send you, your nervous system will send you these signals. It's warning you that you're either going to get down yourself or I will put you down, because
Yes.
I need what I need. And I really don't care if you break your teeth or your arm or your hip in the process of getting you down. I'm the almighty brain and I will get you down if I need you to. And when we talk about you having those moments of pre-syncope and then sometimes syncope where you fainted, that was your brain saying, hey, this isn't sustainable. I can't keep
Yes.
doing this. And if you don't change what you're doing, I'm going to put you down and you're not going to like the way I do it.
I think it's one of those non-negotiable things in life. And so in a sense, I was lucky because I had those warning signs. And so everything that happened after that had to happen because there was no alternative, or there was no good alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But most of us, when we get buried into our digital technologies, it's a very gradual process. It just happens over time. And we don't notice small changes over time. And before we know it, we're busying ourselves with things that aren't really that important. And we're losing connection with all the things that are important. And this really comes down to the crux of the problem. Everything online is easy. That's why we create technology. All through history, we create technology to make everything easy. Today's technology we carry around with us. We may wear it. Later on, we may have it implanted. So it's constantly with us, constantly making things easy. But we're biological animals. If we don't exercise, we won't develop the muscles. Astronauts go into space, they have to exercise because they don't have gravity helping them to keep their muscles. If we don't exercise our minds and work hard at things, again, we're not going to create those connections. So as biological animals, the sad truth is we're going to have to work hard at everything. Everything is going to be hard and it's going to take time. In contrast, everything online is shiny, glittery, and easy. And we often take the easy option, but it's not good for us in the long term. So it's short-term gratification at the cost of our long-term health and well-being. So there's lots of unintended consequences, but the ones I like is that we compromise our sleep by being overstimulated late at night with our smartphones. And it takes us longer to go to sleep. We move about less. Now, I know in the UK, we're about 30% less active than we were in the 1960s. So it's not just because of smartphones, but it's the technology making everything easier. And certainly the stats say that it causes the same amount of deaths as smoking now, inactivity. We don't necessarily eat good diets because we're busying ourselves online. So there's lots of unintended consequences. But I always like to think that being online is a bit like being in a sweet shop. And I love that analogy because I happen to like chocolate. Now, it's the UK version of chocolate rather than the US version of chocolate. And there are some differences.
Fully understood. Absolutely.
But if I'm in a sweet shop, I'm tempted. I'm going to buy some of that chocolate and I'm going to eat it. And I may tidy it all up. So best I buy a small box. So when we're online, we might think, in the UK, we might think we're going to check the weather because it changes so often. But when we go on our smartphones, we forget about the weather. We go on our emails, we go on our social media, we check the news, we check this, that, and that. And we forget why it was that we went onto our smartphones because it's a sweet shop. There's just so many great things to look at. And we just get lost in it. So I promote digital detox, but digital detox is your digital habit off switch. So you come away from the sweet shop, the technology sweet shop, and that gives you a chance to think. When we receive all this external stimulation, we're being constantly bombarded. It's like being in a crowded room with lots of people shouting at you, over here, I've got this new thing, over here, play with me. And it's only when we come out of that environment that we think, what is it that I was going to do today? Who was it I was going to be with? What was I going to achieve? And because we do need time to think. So digital detox at its very simplest level is just coming out of the technology sweet shop so that we can then decide what it is that we need to do. And there's lots of things we need to do as humans. We're social creatures. And there's lots of studies and reports, particularly in the US, about loneliness epidemics. And it's about communication online is fantastic. It was a godsend during the COVID pandemic where we couldn't get out. But it's not instead of human connection. It's not the same as, it doesn't give us the same social connection. And as social animals, we need that. There's a lovely longitudinal study in the US, and it tries to work out what is it that gives people a happy and long life. And connection with other people seems to come out as one of the strong indicators. So here's the really strange thing. If you go to a cafe or restaurant and you just have a look around, you'll see groups of friends on their smartphones. You'll see families on their smartphones when they're supposed to be present and connected. So a lot of the work that I do is about trying to bring us back to what it is to be a human, a biological human, and why, although it may be counterintuitive, if we want to be more productive, then we have to do less multitasking, which of course the brain can't really do. And we have to be more purposeful about what it is that we do. But after creating the Digital Detox Coach, I found that a message of self-care, particularly with professionals, came across as a little bit sort of negative in the sense of weakness.
Mm.
So I thought, okay, how can I use being an endurance athlete to explain that actually it's a strength? And so we all know about our top athletes, athletics, American football, soccer athletes. We all know what they have to do, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And so by reversing and saying, well, do you want to be a digital business athlete? Do you want to go to work and instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to be okay or just do all right, do you want to go to work and actually do your best? Well, think like an athlete. Something important coming up, get some sleep. Do one thing at a time, take rest and recovery breaks, and sort of flip the whole discussion on its head. And so that's the message that I go out with, trying to create lots of digital business athletes to say, look, if you really want to be your best, you've got to work with being a human being.
I appreciate that perspective so much. And it's something that we talk about too. Basically, did you get your reps in today? Did you get your steps in today? We think about that. And that is a strength. That is discipline. That is athletic. Yes. That is an investment in your health. But we don't necessarily value, did you get the reps in today with journaling, with self-reflection, with gratitude? Did you do those things that are just as important? Because as you said from the beginning, as your body told you, your nervous system told you, the mind and the body are one. And frankly, both have been deconditioned because you had become so externally focused on basically almost you were kind of like a pillar of technology, and you were just this human cog that was being used to create and uphold this technology, but you weren't servicing yourself as a person. You weren't nourishing yourself mentally or physically. And eventually that's going to crumble because we aren't made of stone. Like, we have physiological needs. We have needs for our mental health and our physical health. And so I so appreciate you making that call to action that we need to get not only the physical reps in every day and value that, but also for our mental health. And that requires us to step out of that room. And I want our listeners to take a moment to think, and we'll just have a moment of silence after we list some possibilities. Are there messages that your body has been sending you that you're feeling overwhelmed, that you are underserving yourself, that you're not doing the things you need to do for your mental health and physical health, that you've been ignoring? Because again, you're in this loud room. As Colin said, you cannot multitask. So your focus is on that room and on managing everything that's going on around you. Are you missing signs? So we've already talked about syncope, that feeling of lightheadedness, and that can even lead to collapse. We've talked about, you mentioned insomnia, which we know when we're looking at a screen. So the pineal gland in our brain is there. One of the things that it does at the seat of the soul, that was as it was originally called because of where it is in our brain, it secretes melatonin in response to darkness, which is so brilliant because when we were hunter-gatherers for a very long period of time, when it was dark, it was safer for us to be in shelter and sleeping. And when it was light, we needed to be outside hunting, gathering, doing the things we needed to do for life, right? So there's a reason that would change with light, because summer has a different schedule than winter, right? So we were flexible as creatures. Our brains are so incredible. Our bodies are so incredible that they were so flexible that they could move with the seasons so that we slept when it was imperative for us to sleep. Now we're short-circuiting this incredible wiring we have and the biology we have, the neurochemistry, by providing a source of light often right before we want to go to sleep. And also, on a deeper level, psychologically, providing a source of stress, right? We're not allowing our brains to really relax, have those moments of mindfulness, those moments to go over the day, et cetera, to process. So then we turn off the phone, we put it next to us. Here, I have mine right here. We turn off the phone, we put it next to us. Probably the screen is still up. So then every time it goes off, because we get one of our million notifications at night, that's still sending light to our brain, that even when we're sleeping, our brain, we're always on some degree of alert, right? So we're still responding biologically. So we talked about insomnia with the smartphones. And so maybe you're exhausted all the time. Maybe you get headaches. Maybe you have body aches because you're getting deconditioned. So want to give a moment as we talk about all of these little signs that we may be ignoring because we're so busy in this technological race of distraction, really, from real life, which is our body and our space and our community. What might you be ignoring? And if you consider it, what is it trying to tell you? And what are the habits that you can start to integrate into your lifestyle? Which, Colin, I know is something important to you in your work. We can have these big conversations about how bad it is because we know it's really bad. We know it's really bad for our health. But we also understand on a scientific standpoint and a psychological standpoint that people can't tackle this bear, right? They have to go one by one with habit change, moment by moment, day by day, to try to take back their time and regain control of their nervous system from these external distractions. What are some ways that people can start to make those baby steps, so to speak, to begin with?
So there's some very, very easy ways. Our online world is predominantly visual. We all have the ability to close our eyes. And if you close your eyes, you immediately shut out all the visual stimulation. And that just one simple thing gets you back into yourself, your body, your own thoughts. So that's the very easiest thing. The other is willpower is never enough, especially when we're tired. So we shouldn't have to rely on willpower. So the second way is to use our environment to help us. So if we move environments, we physically move from an online environment to an offline environment, whether that's making a cup of coffee, whether that's talking to a friend, whether that's just staring out the window or going into a garden. We go to an offline environment and we remove the triggers that create all of those things that we do on autopilot. So we remove the environmental triggers that cause us to grab the phone before we've consciously thought about why we've got the phone. There's some great research that says that the mere presence of a smartphone near to us, whether it's in a bag or a pocket or even on the table, has a cognitive pull on our resources. So if we, instead of putting the phone by our bedside, we actually put it the other side of the room. If we're not prepared to actually charge it in a different room because we're not ready for that, put it away so that you create some friction into going to look at it. So that's another simple step. There's some great research from Microsoft on back-to-back video calls. And they found that if you did back-to-back video calls, that you actually got accumulation of stress over the day. And you ended up taking all that stress home with you. And then they started to introduce these 10-minute, 15-minute breaks between the video calls. Not only did they find that the productivity went up in the video calls, but that those 10-minute breaks allowed the stress from the previous video call to start to subside before going to the next one. And they even put a facility in Outlook to enable you to do that. So that was a great piece of research. So in your work schedule, if you arrange for several 10 to 15-minute breaks to enable you to restore your attention and focus, which means you do a better job, a more productive job. It doesn't mean coming off your laptop and looking at your smartphone. No, that doesn't work. But I know a lot of people do that. So that's another easy thing for people to do. You could arrange when you go out with your friends or your family, you could say, do you know what? I'm with my best friends or I'm with my favorite family. There's nothing that's going to happen on my smartphone that's more important than being with you for this period of time. And you can make an agreement to say, look, we won't look at our smartphones. But also to make it a bit of fun, because someone's going to look at their smartphone. You know it's going to happen. So have a sort of a friendly forfeit to make it a fun thing if you look at your smartphone. So there's lots of easy things. I have a challenge, which is devilishly hard to do. I find it hard to do as well, so it's hard to do. But it will give you a lot of self-awareness. It's called the Just One Thing Challenge. And the Just One Thing Challenge is quite simple. I might think, I'm going to look at the weather because it could rain today. We're in the UK. It could rain today. It's any day. It doesn't matter. But that's all I'm allowed to do. So I'll go to my smartphone and I'm only allowed to check the weather, and I'm not allowed to do anything else for 5 minutes. That's all, just 5 minutes. And then I'm allowed to do another one thing. And it's lovely to try it because it's devilishly hard to do. Because we want to forget the weather to look at our emails or look at the news or look at something else. But it's a matter of training. Now, the great thing about all these things is because we have used our smartphones every day for years, then we've got some very deep ingrained habits, and they're all in our autopilot. And we do them instinctively because that's the way the human brain works. If we want to change those, then it's going to take time to go from us having to think about doing the new habit every time to not thinking about doing the habit. And there was some research by Wendy Wood, and she had an average of 66 days. But it could take 200 days for complicated things or slightly shorter. But the important point is it's going to take a reasonable amount of time. So don't expect to succeed on day one. It's like running a marathon. If you've never run a marathon before, on day one, you probably can't do it. But if you do the right training, and if you have lots of small steps, and if you're in good health, chances are you will be able to run a marathon after a period of time.
And anything worth doing requires an investment.
It does, and lots of repetition. So if you play a musical instrument, which of course we do, it required an awful lot of repetition and still does.
Yes, yeah. In our home, we play music every day. And I've thought about that several times during this discussion because for our digital detox, fortunately, our children are not too attached. They really do. Our youngest really loves Minecraft. He does have maybe too strong a love for Minecraft in his little engineer mind. He just loves the building aspect, but he'll socialize with his oldest sister to do that together. But in general, we as a family are not too into our smartphones and such. But I think it's because of the intentional way that I've put up the guide rails, the safety rails around us to say, we, especially with instruments and with writing, we write a certain amount every day. We play instruments. My son plays drums and trumpet and piano. My daughter plays the flute, the guitar, predominantly. And we literally have musical instruments all around the home because I think it's so easy to have screens everywhere and have that be the next thing and in your pocket, right, with your phone or on your wrist. But I think to your point, being really intentional about it and making those habits of doing those things, when we're creating those habits with our children, it's in part why we have books everywhere and we have musical instruments everywhere, because when I get their attention for a moment, I want it to fall on something that they can be creative with and really be in that moment and doing something with their bodies and with their brain that is theirs, that is a creation that stimulates their mind in a different way than when they're just going completely out of themselves and getting stuck in the den of the noise of these technological worlds and gaming worlds. Are there other little things that when you think about families, other than incorporating story time, cooking, you mentioned, that we now often buy the convenience foods, right? Because we don't have quote unquote time to cook, but maybe taking the time to cook is the habit that breaks up our time with technology and keeps us more keyed in and also keeps us capable of performing these skills that we can lose if we outsource them tremendously and repeatedly.
Yes. So You touched upon it earlier on. You said that quite often you would do something together on technology. Um, a, a lot of people, when they're using technology, do it by themselves. And one of the steps is to democratize it. So if you like to look at really cute dogs or cats on TikTok, then why not do it together with some of your friends? So democratize it so it becomes a social activity. So you're still using technology, you're still having fun, and we all like to have some fun, but you're also having fun with other people rather than just by yourself. When it comes to parents, it's there's a truth here. It's the parents' behavior on their digital devices that sets the example, or the grandparents' behavior that sets the example. If you go back to the days when people used to smoke a lot more, the research suggested that the children of parents who smoked were more likely to smoke themselves. Now, I haven't seen the equivalent in the digital area because it's a far more complicated thing, but you can imagine that if the parents are setting a good example by being fully present when they're talking to their children, then the children are more likely to understand how to use technology in a more purposeful way. So the shock news really is that you always have to train the parents, and it's not something you can just train the younger generations, and you have to train the grandparents as well, if you want to create these new digital habits.
Be the change you want to see in the world, in other words.
Absolutely. But there's some risks. So because technology makes everything so much easier, we outsource our knowledge and skills to the technology. So very simple things like sat-navs. We can all follow the sat-nav, but there's a lot of research that suggests that we don't necessarily remember how we got there compared with people that use paper maps, for example. I had an instance where I'd lost my phone and I needed to, I borrowed someone else's phone and I needed to phone home. Now, I knew my home number, I knew my mobile number, but all the other numbers were on my phone. And the only other one I could remember was my mother's phone number when I used to live at home. So I'd outsourced the memory of all those phone numbers, even my wife's phone number, to my technology. So, of course, now I have a piece of paper with them written on. It used to be called the Google effect or digital amnesia. Now, let's take that one step further. I can ask ChatGPT or any of the other AI models almost anything. And if we ignore the fact that there's lots of errors in what comes back and it calculates the most popular answer, then I don't have to write that email. I don't have to read the response. I don't have to read the book. I don't even have to write the questions to ask someone about the book. So I'm outsourcing all of that knowledge to the AI model. Now, what might happen? Well, I don't have that knowledge inside of me. I don't have that skill anymore. And so I don't have that to work on, to be creative, to problem solve, to do anything. I'm getting dumber. So, but I also know that actually we can't do anything about technology advancing. AI is an arms race. All the companies we're ever going to work for will have digital transformation programs. They're going to have AI. In the medical field, there's some absolutely fantastic things done with AI which go through proper medical trials. So the quality of them is absolutely amazing, and it will be incredible what can be done. But if you imagine, and I think it's started to happen now, where all of the simple things are starting to be automated, whether by AI or not. And it's much harder for younger people to get that first job because that used to be those simple things. And so if you project 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's always very hard to say when. What is the future for humans in the workplace? Well, I would suggest the future for humans is that we are part of this earth. We're biological animals. We have senses. We sense this world because we need to make sense of it. We need to survive. And I like to express it as we live on the edge of chaos. We don't really know what's going on out there. We don't really know what's going on inside of us. Science is our best bet, but it takes time to understand all of these things. But we're able to survive and we're able to sample this world. So it may take AI a very, very long time because you train AI on information that's available. It doesn't have a body. It lives in this wonderful data center that's fed with electricity and cooling and all those other sorts of things. It doesn't have to sample this world, which is our job. So if we want to have a future in work, then my suggestion is we get very, very good at being human, about learning the things that we're actually very good at, because the simple things the AI is going to do, it's going to sort it all out for us. So, but the really difficult stuff, which is living and surviving in this world, is our job. And so, so I recommend, engaging in the world because that's the hard thing to do. And that will be the hard thing to do in the workplace as well.
And engaging with people,
Yes.
with not just your senses, but getting back to that art of connecting with others that I think as a byproduct of technology, we have lost a lot of our skills of connection.
But we have to imagine the next technology, the better technology. I mean, 10 years ago, we look back 10 years ago, technology, and we say, that wasn't very good, was it? In 10 years' time, we'll do exactly the same thing. So we have to imagine and be creative about the next technology and the one after that. So that's our job, to imagine things.
And to focus on that. I think it's interesting because we get caught up in the rat race of competing with things outside of ourselves, like technology, but we're fighting a fight we can't win. And I hear my experience of what you're saying is learn how to fight your fight. Stop being distracted by these other fights. Learn how to fight your fight. And it comes back to, so for our talk today, we were laughing earlier offset. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. It all comes down to this radical accountability of what we can do, what we have been doing, and what we can change, what we can modify in our behavior to take back control of our time, our energy, our resources, our health, and as we've discussed several times in our chat, of the example we're setting for those around us, whether we're a leader in the workplace or we have children in our lives that are learning from us, we're setting examples through our actions, through our behaviors. And our relationship with our phones is most likely the closest relationship we have currently in our lives. We're the most bonded, for many of us, to this. And that is why when you said something earlier, it touched my heart so deeply, because I think probably the biggest, we know the commodity that tech companies are after is our attention. That's the most valuable commodity, more than anything else.
Yes.
And in our relationships, it's the same. Even when we're with a little baby, the commodity they want is our attention. So when you pose the suggestion of, when we go out and socialize, we say, you know what? And we say it. We don't just do it. We say it to leave no question in the person's mind of how important and valuable we see them as. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to put it away. Or, I left my phone in my car because there's nothing in the world that could be more important than what's happening right now between you and I. I want to be here for this because I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Talk about like with dating, for example, if someone said that to you or at home with your kids, the impact emotionally of sharing that out loud is incredible. And so I love that you posed that. And I would love to set that as an assignment for health and wellness today for our listeners to try that with someone that you love or care for, to very intentionally say that, do it, turn it off in front of them and just see what happens. Because the feeling I had in my body when you said that was one of just absolute joy. I loved that.
There's an interesting way of looking at attention. Attention is like a spotlight. We can focus it on one thing and not on others. We can only experience what we pay attention to, and we can only remember what we experience. So that the life that you lead ultimately is about what you pay attention to. And it is, as you say, it's ours. What we pay attention to is ours. We shouldn't give it away lightly. We should be purposeful about what we pay attention to. Now, it is hard because technology does its very best to grab our attention. So that's why we have to come out the technology sweet shop.
I love it. And I love the suggestions that you have made today. And I know on your website and in your Substack, you also make other suggestions, other food for thought to get people practicing this. Because again, it really takes a mindfulness. I talk about a lot in my coaching realm of momentum. We have a momentum with our habits, and it's going to take an opposite and equal force to go the other direction if that's what you want to do. And I know you like to provide, and you have today. I'm so grateful. And I know our storytellers are as well. Really concrete, small, digestible things that we can do to try to change the momentum in our lives and build that momentum to go in the direction where we're not losing so much time and energy, and we're not becoming deconditioned as people. Share with our audience how they can connect with you so that they can continue to get more of this really, really helpful information.
So this is the point where I have to laugh, because we all have to live and work online with technology. So I'm going to say the website where there are lots of free resources. There is a free monthly Substack article, and it's monthly for a reason, because quite often in the well-being space, you get bombarded with well-being tips. Well, with Digital Detox, you just can't do that. You have to say, no, it's got to be monthly. I can't send you something every day. So there's the Substack, and there are some videos on the YouTube channel, which are quite thought-provoking. And there's the TEDx talk, which as time goes on, I'm liking even more. As a technologist, the TEDx talk was written before ChatGPT became publicly available. But of course, I was aware of it. But by the time that I did the talk at the Lake Superior State University in Michigan with my colleague Anna Smith from Houston, people have just seen ChatGPT. So there's a lovely monologue about life being made easy and about whether or not we might be losing our human identity to technology. And it's a question. So, so those are the resources. And if anyone wants to contact me with a question, then I'm happy to answer the question.
That's wonderful. And leave questions. We are going to, on social media, have some clips out there. Again, we talk about that commodity of attention to get your attention because it's already on social media. But really, what we try to do here on Talks with Dr. Shafer is try to exist as a form to change that momentum, to shock you out of the dopamine depleting vortex that is, it's just programmed, and you don't need to feel shame about the fact that, you go and you couch rot, as they say, you sofa rot, and you're going reel after reel because it's not your fault. It's designed to basically use your nervous system to its end instead of to yours, to capitalize on what they know we are programmed to do because they've made it the digital candy store, as Colin
They
was
have.
talking
But
about.
but we are more than our behaviors.
Yes.
We do have, I like to prefer to call it degrees of free will. And we
Mm.
have the ability, if we get enough time to think, to change what we do. So we're not just our behaviors.
The power of the pause. I hear the power of the pause being in there that, again, as we're going down this rabbit hole, we're going, creating space for pause. And I think, when you talked about your Substack, that's a space for pause. That's an opportunity to read. Before I let you go, we are talking on a podcast. It is audio visual because that's the world of podcasting now currently. And I think there's some pros and cons when we think about, nonverbal communication and different ways people learn. So I think there are some positives to it. But from your perspective as a technologist in this space of health and wellness and learning, do you have a preference for how you would absorb information? Would you prefer audio visual versus audio? And what do you think are the strengths, especially for someone who is working to digitally detox in one format versus another?
So I would always revert to books, printed books,
Mm.
because there are no distractions. If you go online, you have to purposefully eliminate all of the other tabs, the windows, the notifications, so that you don't have distractions. If you have distractions when you do something online, then you're not able to go as deeply. Video communication, we're doing a great video communication because I'm not in the United States, I'm in England. And it's pretty good. Voice communication is the next best one. So if, for example, if you get a message from a friend, why not call them? So the original message is via something which is, I would say, it's called pidgin English. It's not in proper English. It's a very short format. Why not call them? Or why not arrange to meet up? So you try and work to the higher levels of social communication if you can. So I like video podcasts. Audio podcasts are actually very, very effective. The spoken voice means that you're focusing on the tonal quality, almost what's not being said, and you can get so much more information. So I'm in mixed view about whether or not video or voice is better, because actually, in their own rights, they're equally as good as each other sometimes.
I love the discussion. And also, I want to just put a little challenge there. This has been a fun conversation because it's really made me think of some challenges for our listeners to make it really interactive. And I want to pose a little challenge. If you, like myself, when Colin said, if you get a text, why not call? If you had a little feeling of fear inside your chest, which I know, I feel you, I hear you. So many of us will have that feeling. that is information from your nervous system. Don't get lost in the fear, but think, what is it telling me? Is it telling me that, like Colin mentioned earlier, that maybe this is a skill? I haven't been doing my reps, my verbal communication reps. I'm not making those calls. I'm just texting. And maybe that's why when someone calls me and it goes to voicemail, I'm thinking, that could have been a text. Is it truly that you didn't want that verbal connection, or is there some fear there because you're deconditioned in having that type of conversation? And rather than listening to that fear and backing off of it, I would say get really curious and try to get those reps in, and then see how your relationships change when you do those things that are scary and work on those skills that maybe have atrophied a little bit with disuse. So we want to give you that challenge. And as Colin said, go to his Substack and his website and listen to the TED Talk, which is absolutely wonderful and thought-provoking, especially now as we look back, as things are changing. And there's going to need to be a new one as AI is having such a big impact. So we'll be waiting for that announcement, Colin. That's our call to action here from Talks with Dr. Shafer.
Thank you for that.
I am so grateful that you are here to share your story and all of this amazing expert advice with our listeners. Thank you so much for being here, Colin.
Thank you ever so much for inviting me. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. And storytellers, we are so grateful for your resource of your time and attention. And we are excited to hear what lessons you take from our talk today. Until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.
That